1983 launched a console which revolutionized gaming industry by spawning so many outstanding titles in its lifetime. Some of these games you may recognize, such as Super Mario Bros., Donkey Kong, Legend of Zelda, and Metroid. The console I'm talking about is no other than NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Nintendo is a Japanese company that was founded in September 23, 1889 by Fusajiro Yamauchi, and it was originally producer of the card game Hanafuda. This is a picture of all the playing cards in the Hanafuda card game. In 1963, the company started to produce toys and also started running cab wash businesses and love hotels. All these ventures eventually failed except the toy production line, but after the Tokyo Olympics in 1964, the playing card game didn't sell as much as they expected, so the Nintendo stock prices fell, and that led the company to an economic crisis. A short time thereafter, Nintendo also tried making video games, and so they created a Nintendo Games department, and moved some people from the toy production department to the new area, where the start of a 3-year experimenting session had begun, as well as trying to maintain the toy production line. One of these new people that was brought over was maintenance engineer Gunpei Yokoi, aka the becoming creator of the Nintendo Game Boy. His job at the time was to come up with new ideas for toys and then creating them. In 1977, Nintendo began to produce a home video game console. It was called the Color TV game. They produced 4 versions of this hardware, and each version included several versions of the games you bought. Each version had a different in-game color to it, and if you wanted another color for a game, then you had to buy the other color version. At the time, a student product developer was hired by Nintendo, and his name was Shigeru Miyamoto. He started to work for Yokoi, and his first task of the game was to design the several casings for the Color TV game consoles. He later went to create games, and thanks to that, Shigeru Miyamoto is now one of the most recognizable figures in video game industry. This is because of the original and awesome games he makes, such as Super Mario Bros., Donkey Kong, and The Legend of Zelda. He never fails on his games. Around 1985, the NES came out and shocked the world, but in 1983, the game console had already released, but only in Japan. And rather than NES, it was called the Famicom, the family computer. The NES was the birth of the platformer genre as we know them today. This console did not only revive the gaming industry after the video game crash of 1983, but also made it bigger and better, and soon there were more genres out there than you could ever think of. More video games and much, much bigger industry. This was not only achieved because of Nintendo. Even though they were very helpful in this event, there were other companies that also did the same. EA, for example, with its Sega Genesis. Genesis does what Nintendo don't, and other companies as well. The NES is an 8-bit video game console that could play these amazing games, and thanks to those games, this console sold about 500 million units worldwide. Later on, the SNES, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, released and was better in quality and software. Upgraded to be a 16-bit console, it did manage to stand up for its title, Super NES. More integrated games came out with all the next step generation and made the industry bigger. But what the console did was that it evolved, not only in one state way, but in an economic and successful way. Just like the NES did, the console evolved to be greater and stand up for its title. Each and every time, Nintendo had this evolve stage every time a new console was created, and that made Nintendo so big, and because of that, the Nintendo was referred to such a great company. The Game Boy was created by Gunpei Yokoi, a Nintendo researcher and developer one, and was released in Japan and North America in 1989 and released in September of 1990 in Europe. The idea of having a handheld game console was originally created when one time Gunpei Yokoi was taking the train home from work, when he saw a man sitting on the train clicking intensively onto buttons on a calculator, impatient to see what the calculator would say. The man was enjoying it, and that hit him. It looked like some kind of handheld video game console. Some years after this event, Gunpei started working with Nintendo R&D, Research and Development 1. They were developing a console using his idea to make it handheld 8-bit mobile video game device called Game Boy. This was some years after the Game & Watch came out. After the success of the Game Boy, the developer wanted to upgrade the console to make it better, and they did so by making the Game Boy Pocket. That was much smaller than the original Game Boy. It could fit in your pocket easily and was much more mobile. But there was a catch. It took 2 AAA batteries instead of 4 AA batteries. Sure, it was cheaper, but it didn't store as much energy as the original Game Boy. The Game Boy stored about 30 hours of energy time with the lights off and 15 with them on. And the Game Boy Pocket provided only with 10 hours of constant gameplay, no lights on nor off. It wasn't until they invented the next version, the Game Boy Light, in 1999. This version had a much better energy storage system, with 10 more hours making it store altogether 20 hours. Not only that, the Game Boy Light was provided with lights that made the screen bright enough to look onto it, not only in the dark, but also under any bright light as well. This version was unfortunately not released anywhere else than in Japan. In 1998, another version was released, and not only in Japan this time, but all over the world. It was the Game Boy Color, with a new upgrade called Color Palettes. This version had a variety of 47 different colors besides the 5 basic colors the unit is using for its palette scheme: red, purple, green, yellow and blue. 3 years after the release of Game Boy Color, Nintendo released Game Boy Advance with a new generation step. This unit could link more and better to other units. This was the incarnation of the GameCube. Nintendo have since then made Nintendo 64, Nintendo GameCube, Wii, Wii U, and Nintendo DS, 3DS, and Nintendo Switch. And is one of the 3 biggest game console companies in the world, with 2 others, Microsoft Xbox and Sony PlayStation. It is necessary to remember 2009, the Game Boy was selected into the National Toy of Hall of Fame. Today, Nintendo stand hard and proud, and we look bright forward into the future, never to forget the history they made and the world they shaped.